1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's enough. I take it back. We'll rewind the clock. Let me run down the characters so you understand the relationships, which were never explained in one sentence or one scene. They were explained maybe in the last 30 minutes of the movie. The movie has a very interesting structure, or lack of it. So Shota is the young boy, and Osamu is the male, the alpha male in the house, who's really beta to his Nobuyo, not his wife, but his consort. Now, Osamu and Nobuyo were lovers when she was married to someone else and probably working in a strip joint. And her husband threatened to kill both of them. So they both killed him, and they were acquitted out of self-defense. This comes up only in the closing minutes of the movie. So that's their bond. Even though they seem like they're married people and bored with each other, there is that rainy day scene that he doesn't stop patting himself on the back for. So Shota is the boy that Osamu rescues from a car he was breaking into. And that happens after a scene at the end where they break into a car and Osamu steals a backpack with the high fashion logo on it. Mm-hmm. And Shota at that point says, well, did you break into the car to steal something or to save me? Because he was alone in a locked car. And he said, no, that time it was for you. And that's a very important concept because he's on the fence with that. He doesn't really know if that's true or not, or if it matters. And so that's Shota. Aki, who goes by Soraya at the strip parlor, whatever you call that, automat for teasing, she's the young adult woman. And that's probably the most complicated relationship to decode. And you have to go through grandma for that, who's nobody's grandma. Well, she's grandma, step-grandma. She was married to the older man in the white suit in the photograph we saw 2 times. Oh, hi, Melanie and Michael. Good to have you with us. Roz, welcome to you. So she was married to him, and another woman interceded and stole her husband away from her. And we see she goes to visit a couple, middle-class Japanese couple, and he is the son of her ex-husband with the other woman. And that guy's always felt very guilty and gives her 30,000 yen a month. Right? She walks away, says 30,000 yen again, disappointed. Well, what's really hard to grasp is that couple had 2 daughters, one of whom you see going off in a school uniform. And the confusing thing is that she looks like her sister, who is Aki Soraya in the strip parlor. She didn't go to Australia, and she's pretending how estranged she was from her parents. And somehow she gravitated towards the grandma, who is Hatsue. And step-grandma kept extorting money from her parents to keep her to support the clan. So, I think you're beginning to see that everybody has maybe a double agenda for everybody else. And then the little girl had no agenda, but she was abused by her parents. Remember the cigarette burns on her arms? And so her name is Yuri in the film. And if there's any other relationship I can clear up for you, I had to make notes to make sure I got it right. I kept crossing out who was related to whom, but I got it, I think. Can I help anybody else understand the relationships clinically? We'll get into what they mean.
I think I was most confused by Aki. I didn't get if the grandmother, if she was her grandmother. I was mostly confused with her.
Step-grandmother.
Yeah.
The granddaughter of her ex-husband, but no shared gene pool with that. And I missed it the first time I saw the film, so don't feel bad, because I saw this girl in a school uniform walk out the door, and I thought, oh, that's the same girl in the strip club, in front of the one-way mirror. No, That's her younger sister. So I hope this helps you give the film a second chance, because I want to introduce a way of interpreting it for you.
Susie wanted to say something before you
I'm
do
sorry.
that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Susie, unmute yourself.
Is anyone of the group of the clan blood related?
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
I
they just all happen to come together because of the grandma. It really isn't the grandma.
Well, I don't know how Osamu and Nabuyo latched onto grandma. You know, it's not all explained, but none of them are related by blood. And that's a very important part of this film, because I see them acting like a family, increasingly so as the film proceeds. And I didn't realize it the first time, but these are like Jewish life cycle events, right? After we see Shota, shoplift with Osamu, whom he can't call dad yet. Remember, they have a discussion of this. It's not the first time. People are always talking about, what is my relationship to you? You know, I mean, our complaint as middle-class parents always is, don't talk enough about our relationship with our kids, you know, and these people are, you know, it's like half the scenes have this, you know, what do you call her connotation. So it's always bringing back this, why are we bonded? How has that happened? Why do we stay together and choose our families? This is the theme of the movie. And twice it is said, sometimes it's better when you select your own family because you don't have expectations.
Yeah, I wrote that down, actually.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing. All right, tell us why that knocked you out. Melanie.
You know, I don't know. I wrote down, I'm not really analyzing the movie, but I wrote down some of the phrases that really got to me. So I have my notes here. The first one that really got to me was, you don't grow up to care about others. Now, I had two thoughts. At the beginning, I thought, well, that's not what Rabbi Leader tells us, and that's not what Judaism tells us. We seem to forget that that's one of our callings, to take care of others. But then ironically, they actually ended up taking care of others.
Yes, thank you.
So I saw the irony. So then about the choose your own parents. So yeah, sometimes it's better to choose your own parents for yourself. You can't fight blood. And that was really gripping to me. And then the last thing was really gripping was the talking about, like, it's not so bad to do the shoplifting until somebody's really bankrupt. And all I thought about was all these stores that have gone under during the
right.
last year and a half. But so those are my thoughts.
Okay, we'll come back to that. But I want to go back to your first comment. Was it wasn't just that sometimes it's better if you select your family. What was the second thing you said connected to that? It just flew out of my head.
Yeah, you can't fight blood.
That you don't take care of each other. You're not born to take care of others.
Okay.
Yeah.
She was not raised to care about other people. And they're talking about Yuri, the girl with the cigarette burns on her, So she's more like us than anybody else, because we're all orphans too, in a way. These people have no other family. Maybe Aki, the girl who's pretending she's in Australia and estranged, maybe she knows they'd welcome her back. They seem to be grief-stricken in the one scene, but they're also covering up the fact that they don't know where she is. They're saying she's off in Australia studying or something. But it's like this little Yuri is just like Osamu and Nabuyo, and probably she doesn't care about anybody because they're a better option for her than her own mother. And we can come back to the final scenes of the movie when we meet her own mother. But this sense of, well, if they're all so connected from other people, how is it? And this is a big question for this movie and why I was drawn to it. If they're all orphans and don't care about other people, and grandma's just a mercenary, Why do they stay together? You see, that's what this movie accomplishes. By the end of the movie, I think we feel very differently about all of them. Susie?
I think that they stay together because they have no place else to go. And it's a lot like homeless people that establish a bond in the tents. The tents are so close together. It appears to me when I drive by, and I have walked by also, not so recently, it appears to me that they do have a relationship with each other. That's what they have in common. That they either they don't have families, or they think people don't care for them, or they just have a lot of problems.
Right. But you see, that's the irony of that saying, she's like us, she doesn't care about anybody else, but they care about each other. You know, that's what happens when you have nobody else, is that when somebody appears in your life, you glom onto them. Like little Yuri, she's barely verbal, right? She's 2+, probably 3. And she answers the questions in one-word sentences, you know, but she understands a great deal. She even learns how to shoplift on her own because she admires her older brother, quotes. And this is what happens, you know, human beings, we are social animals. And if we're alone, we tend to fill the void, unless we're a psychopath. And these people were not. Yes, they killed Nabuyo's husband, which was a surprise to me. I'd forgotten about that. And they were off. So why are you talking about this? We were acquitted, you know? And it's just, we humans create bonds where there may be none, and we make them meaningful. I want to go back to my impressions of the film and how it follows life cycle events.
Jim, Berta would
Yep.
like to say something. Berta,
Sure.
go ahead.
What stood out for me was the mutual care that they all had for each other, all to me symbolized around all of the eating events.
Right.
There was
Very much.
meal after meal after meal that they shared.
Mm-hmm.
And they became, if you will, a family or a community just by nature of the fact that they had no one but each other. And the interdependence, I thought, was very loving, very caring, and very sweet, almost as you looked at one twosome as compared to the next.
Okay, but how did you feel after Hatsue, the grandma dies, and they find 30,000 yen that she'd hidden away, and they're celebrating over the found money? How did you feel? How does that reflect upon your sense of their relationships?
I think they were saying almost in some obnoxious way, this was their inheritance. And they were delighted that they had an inheritance, albeit, and they were even delighted at certain parts when she brought money into the family. But that was an aspect of the way they related, because there was a mutual sense of neediness. And how did they all contribute to the whole and to their shared life? So
now,
that didn't get to me.
Okay, good. Some
Jim?
people may have taken offense at that. Yeah.
I was reminded of my family's friends, all of whom were, like my parents, Holocaust survivors. And they had no other family, and they were family to each other out of need. It didn't make them, by the way, better people necessarily. They remained who they were. Some were nicer people than other people, as was the case in this. This so-called family, they had good aspects and bad, but they needed each other, and they provided with their common bond and common understanding of life, they were able to give some comfort to each other.
Yeah. Remember, grandma also had a pension. The house was hers.
Right.
But Osamu had a job. We don't know what he made or what he contributed, but he broke his leg or sprained his leg, had to be off his leg for a month. So the money pressures were more fully felt in the course of this movie.
So Howard and then Risa.
Yeah.
I didn't understand just in terms of logistics. When the grandmother died, the immediate thing was, oh, we're going to go and dig up the hole in the floor and bury her. And then pretend as if she never existed. What was that all about? Why did they have to do that?
Does somebody else want to answer that?
Natalie does.
It couldn't go public.
Natalie, unmute. Natalie, unmute.
And then Steve's.
They were taking her money every month. They went and got her money. Remember, she had to have a certain number. They had to memorize it. And every month she was getting this stipend from the government. If she was still alive, they got the money. If she was dead, they weren't going to. They went to get her money. And that is why they dug the ground and buried her. First of all, they didn't have any money to bury her properly. But behind it all was that no one will know that she had died, and they will get her monthly stipend, whatever it was, that was very much needed in this family.
That's a proper assessment of the facts of the movie. But Natalie, how did you feel about it? What was your assessment of their morality?
Well, when people are very poor, they have a different sense of morality. And I sort of thought it was okay. They were very, very poor. When you're very poor, you do things maybe for just to eat every night that you might, or people in this class might not think's okay. I thought it was okay.
Oh, okay. Anybody else want to chime?
I thought it was okay. That grandmother had worked her so hard all her life. So, yeah,
Lisa?
I did.
I think they knew about the pension money, but they didn't know about the money she was getting from the family on the side.
I agree.
So
I agree.
That's what the 30,000 they found came from.
exactly, that was the last money we saw her get.
Yeah.
But so she wasn't sharing everything, but
No.
they must have thought the money came from the pension, because I didn't understand that part. Because if the money came from the pension and they had the card and they knew the number and they were stealing the money, I wasn't clear on that, and I'm still not clear on, was she spending all that money on them?
Well, there was
or
a house.
some of the money, or was she storing it somewhere? Or
There was a house
I
to pay
wasn't
for.
sure.
There was a house to pay for.
I thought they got that money for their care, some of it anyhow.
Yeah, they
Some of
spent
it.
it.
Isabel?
And you know what she got back?
Hold
What
on.
she got back. What she got back.
got back
the
was love.
grandmother.
Hold on,
Well,
I want to give
well,
Isabel
no,
a
Please,
more-
chance.
please,
more than
everybody,
that.
please mute yourselves
Hold
until.
on.
All right.
I want, Natalie, hold
Whoever you
on.
want to speak.
I
Okay.
want Isabel to get a chance. She has her hand up.
Go
Unmute
ahead.
yourself, Isabel. Isabel, you're muted. Isabel, you're muted. On the lower left,
I see it, thank
there
you.
it is.
I watched the movie. The beginning of it was very confusing to me. It also bothered my eyes, and occasionally I closed my eyes. When I realized this, I went backwards on the TV and watched the part again that I thought I had missed. I would say that they're taking the money or anticipating how they would use the money. I expected that.
Okay, and you were okay with it.
Well, I don't know if I was okay with other things in the movie, but for the money itself, I expected the group to want the money, to share the money, to use the money and continue their life the best they could.
Let's talk about how the group needed each other. Shoplifting when they needed it was a source of revenue, but who did the shoplifting? Right? Osamu and Shota were the primaries. And when little Yuri is a successful accomplice to Shota, Shota is kind of like jealous. And there's that scene where they're walking on a grassy area and he says, oh, she's not one of us, get rid of her. And Osamu says, well, no, give her a chance. She did well today. She's useful. She did this on her own. And there was this petty jealousy among the children about who does dad favor. There was no dad. There were no, blood related children, but they're acting like a family, even in their pettiness. So they're acting as though they have these natural family feelings. I don't know how to express it. They're acting like a real family. It doesn't matter that they're not related. Their need connects them, and their need then triggers their reactions as it's seen differently. Yuri just needs a family because they don't hit her or burn her the way her parents did. She doesn't want to go back. And she admires Shota so much, she even begins to steal on her own when he tells her to wait outside, and that initiates the whole end of the movie.
Steve,
what
do you want to unmute yourself? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I think the movie, one of the main points of the movie is to show sort of the dual nature of human nature, right? I mean, on one level, these people are dirty, lying, manipulative, exploitative grifters, okay, who don't want to really think through the consequences of their conduct. On the other hand, they're capable of love and of real interdependence and caring about each other. So I think that was part of what the director was trying to get at, or the writers, that human nature is complex, and no question external stressors can drive a group of people together, and they can bond. Okay, but there's a lot of contradictions. I mean, at the end of the movie, the little boy Shota says he wanted to get caught, which raises questions. Well, did he want out?
But no, that was not explained. Let's go back to the scene in the store just before he jumps over the edge there. Why did he knock over the goods and run away?
Yeah, it was to help divert. He thought the girl was going to get caught.
Right.
And he wanted to take it upon himself.
That's right.
Okay. But it still isn't clear because whether he wanted out of the situation, because he tells the father, I forget, the putative father, I wanted to get caught, and it was kind of to get back at him on some level. And
it could be. I can't dispute that. I can't support it either. But you're right. There could be all kinds of motivations that he didn't go into. But I think the strongest motivation was to divert attention from her and take the blame, acting like a big protective brother.
And that little situationally, that appeared to be why he did it.
Yeah.
But as you look at the whole context of the movie, and by the end, he was very conflicted about it, and about shoplifting.
He couldn't do it at the end.
That guilt was starting to develop in him.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chime in at this point? Berta.
Not Melanie, but your husband, and I don't know his name.
Michael.
Unmute and tell us your name.
Michael, M&M.
Hi, Michael. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a different view. Since we're discussing the family, I have a different view, a different reality. My reality is based upon a situation comedy called the Goldbergs, where they have their little conflicts within the family, the parents, the children, and each week it's based upon one of the children wants to become a film producer, anyways. But at the end of all this, they always have a long discussion or a statement about what it means to be a family, how you support each other. Now, this may be a fantasy to many of us since it's based upon a 1980s family, but I still feel much more comfortable in this becoming the mainstream of what the family should be this day and age, rather than this documentary type thing of destructive attitudes about human nature. That's my only comment. And also I'd like to interject a new family based upon the 90s, and that's Seinfeld, which is also a new take on what the family is. Both of these shows I watch with my son, and we comment on it during the process.
I mean, there's so many sitcoms like Will and Grace, which is a small family of two, and other hangers-on. A lot of sitcoms today are really referring to the complex thing we call a family and the various configurations that we have. We even have a psychological term in counseling called a blended family, for and that's an infinite number of possibilities. So it's very much the zeitgeist. You're right, Michael. And this film, I think, was completed in 2019. The filmmaker is known for family dramas. He's a humanistic filmmaker, Japanese. I do recommend that you see a much smaller drama called After the Storm that he did 2 films before this one. And that was about a divorced man who is trapped in his mother's apartment with his ex-wife and their son because there's a storm going on and they can't get home. And as maybe some of you heard me say, nothing happens and everything happens in the overnight stay there. And he pleads for the wife to take him back, and she refuses. And that's the end of it. That's the end of the movie. And it's so much more about all the players at the end than you did at the beginning. It's a remarkable achievement in empathy and character building and how the audience engages with the movie.
It's Mona, actually.
You asked earlier if they were immoral, and I think they're thoroughly immoral. But what makes the movie so interesting is they have so many wonderful qualities. My major point of confusion was at the end of the movie, and I thought maybe this is a matter of Japanese culture. They never choose to defend themselves in obvious ways. When they're asked about taking the young girl, Yuri, they never say that she was abused by her parents. They never say that she was cold and hungry and obviously not being taken care of. They never say they saw her every night. And, after seeing this over and over again, this little girl in the window alone, that's when they took action and made sure she got something to eat. I found that really weird.
That they didn't defend themselves. Well, there's another movie the filmmaker made about not defending yourself. But for some reason, maybe I was completing the picture in my own head. I felt that the point of that was that Nobuyo had to confess to burying the mother because he would go to jail if she didn't, because he had a prior record. Mm-hmm. So she was only 5 years. There's a lot that's explained about this film in the final closing vignettes, to the police investigators.
But they could have at least said
but that would,
about their reasons about, and I figured it must partly be because it just would have been,
You took me off.
It would have been inconsistent with Japanese values to start telling stories about the other family.
No, I think they all told the truth and they just interpreted the facts on the ground in a different way. Nobuyo says she doesn't tell the truth about who discovered the girl and who brought her home. Frank, can you mute yourself, Frank?
Sure.
So, even though he discovered her first, but remember, he takes the Nobuyo back there to see her, to find her. And that's when they get the facts about the abusive parents. They hear the argument and they hear the very powerful line, we never wanted her. And Nabuyo, remember, was sick and infertile. So she can't imagine having a child and not wanting it, because that's exactly what she did want. And that strikes close to home. So in a way, emotionally, she can say, sure, I took her because I can't imagine a young child not being wanted. So there's this gray area that people in the film are drifting towards. It's neither moral nor immoral. It's what is most expedient in terms of what's important in life. Or what's important in life is first to survive. And that's why the food is so important. That's why the shoplifting and the money is important, because they're desperate. They live hand to mouth every day. And that's why Aki, goes to this strip parlor, whatever it is. I don't know what they'd call it, comfort zone. And this guy impresses her and through the one-way glass and says, let's go to the chat room where you can have actual contact. And there's this lovely scene where they're not having sex. He's resting his head on her lap, and that's an alternative she offered him. And it's very touching. I don't know if the guy was a stutterer or what, but he was obviously somebody who was terribly alone and just needed love. And she gave it freely because she understood. She felt her natural parents didn't love her, but step grandma somehow got that feeling across. Now, the film doesn't explain that bond either, other than she spent years with them. This notion of expediency in human relations, when you're that close to the bone or the edge of poverty and starvation, it's I don't think it's relevant anymore. We said, those of you who have closer experience to the concentration camps, there was no morality in the camp. If you had to sell your soul to a Nazi guard for a crust of bread, nobody, said, oh, you're immoral. It's whatever you had to do to survive was understood. It's not that people were happy with it if you betrayed them, but they understood the motivation because they all had it. And if some opportunity were offered them in a camp, they would probably take it too. So it's a very complex morality when your stomach's empty, go ahead.
There's a couple of people who want to respond. I just wanted to say that it's not entirely true that there was no judgment. To the extent in the camps or in experiences in the Holocaust, when some people betrayed children, some people were, and there was some judgment. There was also some judgment with regard to Jews who worked as capos and so forth. I think there was a considerable amount of judgment.
There is a movie. I'm glad you brought it up, Fern. And I think Jeff Ellison and I have seen it. It's the most revered Holocaust movie that none of you have ever seen, about the Sonderkommandos, were the people who stoke the ovens with bodies and coaxed people into the gas chambers. Talk about a complex morality. I would love to program it, but a couple people have complained about the very heavy Holocaust movies I've brought forward for you, and we're taking a break. But that is a fabulous film. Steven Spielberg even said it's probably the best Holocaust movie ever made.
What's the name of it again, Jim?
Not telling you because you'll see it on your own.
All right, let's, I think Frank was next.
I'm cruel.
Frank.
You're mean.
Okay. Okay, it's me. I want to go to the very end when one of them, and I can never remember which her name, is actually accused and is behind bars. And I can't figure out why she's the one that was behind the bars. Was it because she was the one that buried the grandmother, or because she was the one that stole the child, or who, or what?
No, they all buried the grandmother together, even Shota, the boy. Okay. So, but she took the blame for it because she had no prior record. But Osamu her companion, did have a prior record for some unnamed crime, and she took the fall for him. Remember, she says at the end, 5 years is nothing to me, but you'd be in for longer if I had covered for you.
Oh,
So
I
that's
see.
what that was all about.
So they never got blamed for taking the child.
I believe you're correct. That was not followed up on. Although the child was returned to the proper mother. You see, they said she could leave at any time. We cared for her. We didn't abuse her. And somehow they got off on the kidnapping charge.
Okay.
But let's pursue that. Frank, go ahead, and then we'll pursue the kidnapping.
No, I think
While we have our turn here, I just wanted to comment on another line that I thought was memorable. Somewhere, the male, the alpha male, forgot his name.
Osamu.
Yeah, he's asked why did you teach the boy to shoplift? And he said, that's the only thing I know. I couldn't teach him anything else.
Mhm.
I thought that was,
That's sweet. It's like I loved him and I wanted to be a father to him, and that's all I could give him. You know, heartbreaking, you know.
Yeah, it's
but
also kind of bullshit.
why
Which
do you
is part
say
of
that?
the contradiction of, this is part of the whole theme of the movie, you know, is people do have choices, right? And
He didn't have to teach his steps, his adopted
he
sons.
did have a day job as a laborer. He knew right from wrong, but he was amoral.
Oh yeah, no. Well, but for me, the bullshit was, well, it's okay to steal as long as the store doesn't go bankrupt.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause nobody owns it yet. That was BS. The store owns it. So, you know, that is a theft. But it's all, you know, relative harm, I guess. Better, we should take, you know, shampoo from the store than we should go without dinner tonight. It's that kind of relativism.
Berta.
It was a particularly interesting film for me to see. I lived in Japan for 6 years, and it's the most autocratic, obedient society imaginable. You can walk into the most exclusive antique shop, and if it was lunchtime, no one would be there. And there was, you know, they just trusted you that you weren't going to take anything. Now, of course, I'm going back, you know, at this point, 35 years. But I think one of the questions that came up is why didn't they stand up to the police and explain? And it would not be in the character, at least in the character as I knew the Japanese, to stand up. And the interesting thing for me, I guess, is to see a whole group that coalesced around being disobedient, if you will, according to normal cultural values, given that they were Japanese. It was this unbelievable contradiction, certainly for me, as I got to know the Japanese in the years that I was there.
I've said this before. We talked about Jews betraying each other in the camps. Jews are people too. You know, Japanese are people too. If you're going to have exceptions, and this was a very exceptional group of people and a constellation of relationships. But yeah, you're right. Can you share with us what you did in Japan for 6 years? You don't have to. I'm just trying.
I worked as a clinical psychologist with the international community for 6 years.
Oh, okay. So you weren't shrinking Japanese, which was kind of
no, and the Japanese were delighted that I was there.
Yeah, sure.
And I only worked with people whose primary or secondary language was English.
Okay.
So
well, what's interesting, you know, from a filmmaking standpoint, I have always loved Japanese films, and they go very deep, yet they're very unstated. You know, everything's kind of obliquely told in a demure way, but they let you know what's going on, and it drives you under the skin of the performer. So this is why I'm sure, you know, like you said, the Japanese would never go into counseling, or not at that time, 35 years ago, because it's a very demure culture, you know, and I'm not trying to be biased about it at all. This is their style. Look at calligraphy, look at Japanese ceramics, look at the architecture in the country, all very restrained, elegant, harmonious, but not flamboyant. I mean, there are exceptions to that, of course, especially in more modern art. But this is a national trait. I think Jeffrey may be next. Fern?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I want to turn to the very end of the film.
Yeah, good.
With the little girl by herself, and then she's playing pickup sticks or something, and then she looks over the top of the railing forlornly, because she's at home with her parents, and yet in certain ways she was better off with this so-called quote unquote family. And the family to me was really based on utility. And when there isn't love, maybe utility is enough to keep the family together if there isn't love. And I question the true nature of the love, because they were willing to abandon Shota when he hurt his leg.
There was an explanation for that. It went by very quickly. Oh, we can leave him here, they'll feed him. So it was the expeditiousness of it, telling themselves they were thinking of him. But if they stayed behind, they'd get caught. And it would be led to the house and the grandmother under the ground and the taken pension. It was they made a value judgment. He'll survive.
Right, but it wasn't based on love. Again, it's based on utilitarian reasons. But when there isn't love, like I say, maybe utility is at least something to keep people together, to bond people, humans together.
Well, I wouldn't say there was no love there. I mean, clearly they were all torn about their relationships with each other. Call me dad. I can't do that yet. She's not really your daughter, grandma. We don't know what she is, but that was the deal when you brought her in. And Shota, you're not really my son, but I'd like to call you my son. And Shota's torn. You feel the different needs that people have, and it's a need to be connected, yet there are barriers to the connection. It's to what extent will people go to feel comfortable and to feel loved, even if they're deceiving themselves? So I don't think it's a matter of love or no love. It's a matter of questioning love and questioning the utility and saying, I can survive with this, but it's not enough for me. Living in that gray area in between is very frustrating. And everybody showed the signs except grandma. I'd like to talk about grandma and the ending, but we can do other topics before that. But thanks for bringing that up, Jeff.
Jim, I wonder if you would talk a little bit about why you think the director has so many ambiguities and things that are unclear and unexplained.
I think the most important reason is that we are not accustomed to this kind of oblique storytelling. And the names and the relationships were a little vague. The relationships were, you had to figure out a little too much to our Western eyes and comprehension. So that really threw a lot of people for a loop. I had seen this film, a year ago or so, and I programmed it because I knew it was really good. And I felt there was a lot of Jewish relevance to it when you look at family and morality. And then I watched it again this afternoon. And when I saw it, I said, people are going to have trouble with this. But it's okay, because I feel, there's meat on its bones. It's like, forgive me, I don't want to sound pompous or condescending, but I really want to bring films to you that have new territory for you to explore as film goers, because it's so rich and there's so much self-revelation these films can bring to us. It's exciting. That's what got me into film. And stretching is good. What can I say? It's like yoga. I hope that answers your question, Fern. Why did the Japanese director be so oblique? part of it's his kind of storytelling, but he's very emotional and he's dealing with deep family issues. When you see after the storm, you'll understand it. He directed a film we saw back in the university synagogue days called The Third Murder. And that was even more oblique than this, about the defense attorney who couldn't understand why the murderer accused of a third murder didn't want to help in his own self-defense. And there are lots of family complications. And at the end, we're not knowing, did he or didn't he do it? You know, was he protecting the girl with a limp or not? In a way, it didn't matter. It was taking us into that gray area and changing the characters' minds, changing their whole take on the world. So I encourage everybody to see The Third Murder as well, but that's a little harder to decode than this. But worth it.
I just wanted to say that the fact that Shoto would not call him dad was extremely important in developing that child's character. Mm-hmm. And I felt throughout the entire movie that he held himself apart from the family. Yes, he was connected because he was doing the shoplifting, but you knew all along that's not who he was. That's why he was in a book all the time. He wanted to learn. He wanted to study. He was told that going to school was not necessary for those who could study on their own. He came with that. Yes. I don't know how young he was when he came into the family there, but when he jumped, I thought he was jumping to a better future, and he knew it. He knew it. He when he pushed those cans over to protect Yuri, he did it with a vengeance and an anger at the same time. And he told her to stay outside. He was angry at her. He was angry at her. He was angry, and he had to get out of the situation, and he knew it. I don't think he was so afraid of the police. I think he was jumping to a new future. I felt it the minute he jumped that he's getting out of a situation that he really doesn't like. Well, was it death, or did you think he thought he'd survive? Oh no. A child that age is not going to think he's going to die. He's still at the age where he's immortal. Oh, okay. So that's part of childhood. But that's how I felt about him. That he was getting out of it. He'd had it. Well, he did refuse to break into the car. At the end, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore because the logic just isn't there for me. Right. At the same time, he's still very torn about being part, what the family meant to him. Right. I forget his last vignette. I think it may have been a shot of him in the bus. And the bus, yes. In the bus. Leaving. That's right. He's going back to the children's home where he's living. Where he's very appreciative that he's in school. Yeah, but he looks back. He looks back in calls him dad for the first time. Yes, he to himself, right. So, and it's just like Yuri looking over the railing wistfully at the family. What she once had is better than where she is now. Remember, her natural mother, her birth mother, had a big bruise under her eye. She'd been abused by the guy again, and she tries to buy, she says, come on, I'll buy you new clothes. And little 3-year-old Yuri shakes her head no. And then she goes outside, sings the Americanized song. And she also has the little glass beads from the soda bottles that she's collected, that she got from Shota. And that's what she's playing with pickup sticks. So it's this very oblique way of saying, this is Shota in my hands. This is what I have left of him. And it's dear to me. And then she looks over the railing. So it is this very Asian, please don't jump all over me for being racist, aesthetic of referring to things through other things. But it's well established.
We have two people, LaDonna and Frank. Art, did you want to say something too?
I'll wait till others speak.
Okay, LaDonna, Frank, and then Art.
Thank you, Fern. Fern, I wanted to comment on your comment about the concentration camps. God bless you, honey. I also want to comment on Homeboy Ministries, to get kids out of gangs, and the movie Gran Torino.
Yeah.
Because this is like the gang, the kids, they have no one. And so they pack up together and they, thank God for Father Boyle, who did Homeboy, for the kids to get out of the gang. And we see this everywhere now with the homeless. But I can understand it. I agree with Risa about the kicking the can. He was angry. He went out and, glad to be able to study. So that's my take on it. And thank you for showing the film. And thank you, everybody, for coming and joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Frank and then Art.
Lower left.
Yeah, okay, got it. I want to go back, Jim. You just said something a few minutes ago. You said that one of the reasons you selected this film was its relevance, you thought, particularly to Jewish families.
Yes.
What do you see to Jewish life, particularly, or culture here?
Well, I think everybody's a symbol. Yuri was the newborn in the family. And her rite of passage was they burned her old clothes and gave her clothes from, that didn't fit one of the others, Aki. The spat, the jealousy between Shota and Yuri. He didn't like the fact that she was rising in status. I mean, that's all families, have that kind of spat.
Well, that's my point. I particularly, I thought that these were, these are things that happen in all families. They're shown, for example, we're talking about TV sitcoms and things.
All right. Okay, I'm sorry. Jews are people too. I'm sorry. I was reaching. I guess I was reaching, but look, there's a death, and they want to get rid of the body right away. She says, "No, let's sit with her." That's a kind of shiva. It's as we talked about in Torah study this morning, Kavra Kadisha, the ritual thing you do as a send off to the body, the cleansing of the body. And there's a shot where Nabuyo is combing her hair, making it nice. It's like it's not that it was Jewish, but it's that there are co-relatives in Judaism for all these moments, these universal moments that occur in the film. The sympathy, the empathy, the need for love. Granted, it's universal, but it resonated. Look, it resonated with me. I'm sorry. It's like, and I guess when I connect with universality, I'm saying, oh, wow, I'm being a good Jew because I'm tikkun olaming. And
don't apologize. I agree with you.
It's like, this is my soul. I don't believe in souls really, but it's where I find my moral fulfillment, because I can pass judgment and the filmmaker.
Jim, what you're doing is seeing the world through Jewish eyes, and we agree with you. In Hanukkah, you can get those glasses that you put on that have Jewish stars, and you see the world through Jewish eyes, and that's what you're doing, and that's good.
All right, let me call on a few people. Art wants to speak, Barbara wants to speak, and Susie. So in that order, please. Art first.
All right. I just felt that so many characters in the film had mixed feelings and motives, some good, some bad, and often at the same time. The mother figure, while she took the rap for the lead male and went to prison for the 5 years, nevertheless had both that father figure and the son come to visit her for the express purpose of telling the boy that he should seek his own parents,
right,
and do well in school, knowing that the school was the better life for him, while undermining the father figure's connection with the boy. And you could see when the boy left on the bus, the father was running alongside the bus. He hated to part with the boy. And it was only at that point that the boy kind of turned and said to himself, Dad. You know, he couldn't bring himself. So that, and again, the daughter of the other family who came to stay with the grandmother, thinking that the grandmother loved her, and that was the reason that the grandmother took her in. In fact, the grandmother seemed to be doing it in perhaps only for the money, and that gave that girl serious pause. Did my grandmother really love me or not?
Well,
all the characters, I think that's the strength of the film. Everybody is dealing with these complicated, complex emotions, and they're all valid. They had good things about them and truly awful things about them, each one of them, except for the little girl who was, the irony, of course, in her circumstance, in her case, is that society, instead of protecting her, sent her back to the place where she's being abused.
Yeah.
And earlier in the film, we saw that every time the mother said she's going to buy her clothes, that was the time when she'd get hit. So of course she didn't want to go buy new clothes with the mother. Most of the characters were very complex, and that was one of the wonderful strengths of the film, and how understated it all played out.
Right.
I'm
Thank you
sorry for my hoarse voice.
No. Thanks for the analysis. I think it's spot on. I'm glad you brought up that, because even her name was Aki, the woman who was estranged from her parents. She turns them in, because when the police officer, I think it was the woman, says, "Oh no, she kept collecting money from your natural parents," she was surprised. It was news to her, which is why the others didn't know about it, because grandma couldn't share that information. So I suspect, and this is a part of the plot that we don't know, but I suspect she told the police all about this enclave and this family, which is how they discovered the body. But there's a scene with her that follows that. She goes back to the house, pulls back the door, and looks in at the disheveled house. She's wistfully thinking of her family, just like Shota did, and just like Yuri did. Those three, this may have been a better place for me than where I am now. So really lovely touch, but very subtle, and if you can tolerate the subtlety, I thought it was touching and beautiful.
All right, Barbara, and then Susie, and then Mona, and anybody else I miss?
Is there anyone left?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Natalie.
Okay.
So Barbara will speak. I'll move over.
I think that the brilliance of the film, and I had a hard time watching it, is that I felt I was put in this extreme mix master of feelings. And there was no one thing you could light on of value. Everybody was just intensely oppositional about what you bring to the film. And the ideas, morality just got flipped on its head on every level. And you saw in what I thought the filmmaker did brilliantly was made me terribly distressed. And I think that it just made you re-question your values and how you looked at things, because he looked at it through a prism that was so unique, and it was very complicated to watch it through that prism.
And when you realized that, Barbara, were you still distressed, or did you say,
I found the evening more helpful. I think it was a distressing experience to watch it, because everything that I brought to it was incorrect in some way. And then I would have to reposition my feelings and thoughts all the time, because it brought so many different opposing things all the time to it. And it was brilliant.
I totally agree. He was manipulating you and engaging you in a way that was irresistible.
Really?
You took the bait in a big way, but that's good. It was good.
I found it really, really hard. It was very distressing to me. I couldn't find me in it, because every time I started to understand it, it twisted me up again. Yeah. And that was an interesting experience in the film.
And I had a very different response, I found overall a sense of comfort that whatever's going on, whether there are good sides, bad sides, morality, immorality, I felt connection, and I felt comforted by the fact that even in a horrible scenario, even without any family, you could create it. And I found the movie ultimately comforting, not distressing, except for the little girl.
Yeah, because
Except
she
for
was.
the little girl,
Well,
yeah.
the irony is that she's the one who was in the worst situation at the end of the movie.
Yep.
She's back in an abusive relationship, and the others were free of them, relatively free.
Right. All right, Susie, Mona, and Natalie. Susie, unmute yourself and get right up to the mic, please. You're muted.
Dear.
Good. Okay.
Now you can hear me. I just have a small happy thing to say related to what Jim was saying about Jewish feelings coming up. The one time in the film that everybody seemed to be relaxed and happy was when they were the Jewish Japanese family eating. They loved to eat, and they talked to each other and they smiled. Very, very, that was a contrast, but it shows how when you live with people, it's a kind of love. They will be missing that home that they had with grandma, and she held them together in many, many, many ways. She held them together. She did all the work. She did most of the cooking. She sewed their clothes. She did their wash. She was a real grandma to them.
And at the end, she expresses thanks.
You took my last line, Arthur.
But she said she was thankful for her situation.
Yeah, she's on the beach, on the towel or whatever it is, alone.
That's my story.
Yeah, and they're all frolicking in the surf, and it's this POV shot where you see them just totally enjoying themselves, and it cuts back to the grandmother, and she says, "Thank you, thank you," and so she had lived a fulfilled life. She realized this is as good as it's going to get, and why she kept them all together, and why she was happy, with them. To her, my grandmother was very similar, and she was a manipulative con artist. But without the family, she would have been miserable, And Hatsue is like, she knows, wow, I really have something here instead of nothing. My husband abandoned me for some other woman and had a family with her, but not with me. But I have my family. So there's that longing for her that her longing was fulfilled.
Mona and then Natalie.
I was just going to say that I think the film also is an indictment of the superficiality and lack of addressing complexity of the police force. At the end, the police are all absolutely convinced that they're doing the right thing, they're helping, they know the facts, and they are so obtuse that, and yet at the same time, that every one of them is very well-meaning. That was the part that I found, I thought, God, he's just clobbering them all because they cannot appreciate all the nuances and complexities. They've just written these people off as criminals and they can't see anything else.
Well, they're policing by the book, or the social service people, are just, they have criteria. How much time do you spend? How well fed are they? Is there clean water? There's a checklist of, is this family adequate for the child? And they're not able to examine, are people's deepest needs really being met? Because they have a quantitative assessment instead of a qualitative one.
Excuse me, Jim, but so many children today, they're sent back to these homes where there is abuse and sad things happen. And I agree with Fern, except for the little girl.
Yeah. I think Steve's, who do we have left who wants to talk?
Natalie next.
Okay.
Well, yes, I wanted to talk about the beach scene that Jim started. That was a beautiful, to me, ending of the film, because here this old woman who had such a hard, difficult life sits back, and I had the feeling that she kind of was treating them all to the treats and everything that they were eating. And she sits back and she looks at that, all of them, as someone said before, this family that she allowed to come to her home was hers. And she I felt she knew she was going to die soon. And in that culture, I believe what they were saying was that the most terrible thing that can happen to you is if you die alone.
Right.
As many, many people do in our culture here. So when they finally get back to the house and she gets in the bed and she falls asleep and they see that she's dead, I don't remember if it was Newbie or whoever said it. Oh, she died. That was good that she was not alone. And I thought it was sensitive and beautiful the way that film ended in terms of the family structure.
Steve.
Steve Zimmerman.
Yeah, I was going to say I had a different take on the social service people. There's two younger people. There was a male and a female. They weren't old, crotchety people at all. I think they were essentially representing society, how a normal society would look at this dysfunctional family and the way the kids were being raised and where they came from and how they got them.
Yeah.
Okay, they were doing their job, but I also thought every point they made was valid. So, the only point where I think this more of a defect in the script, I think, is sending the little girl back to the same family without digging into the issue of child abuse and why they didn't report her missing for 2 months or something. That is, in my opinion, a flaw in the script. I don't think that would necessarily happen in real life. I think they would dig into those issues and figure out whether she should be in a foster home.
I don't know, but don't you think it was they end the movie basically with a little girl going back. It meant something.
Well, that was the director's choice.
But
the
why?
directors and the script writers are writing it that way.
Why?
I don't.
It's the most poignant. He had three endings. He had, the boy on the bus. He had Aki going back to look at the empty apartment. He had the little girl, playing with the glass beads and then looking over the railing. Which would you pick? You want to go out on a high note, even if it's painful. What's the most dramatic? What carries the mail in the most dramatic way? And that's what it was.
And he wanted to highlight, the positive aspects of this family, this dysfunctional family, what they had to offer.
The other thing is that this girl, when she grows up, knows a better experience of what parents are. Remember, they said of her earlier, she doesn't care about anybody because nobody cared about her. And she's going forward in life with a different perspective now because of her role and her time with them. So that's another reason to end it there. It's sort of obliquely hopeful.
Steve?
No, I didn't have anything to say. That was for Mona, and she already spoke.
Okay.
Lower
your hand.
Lower your hand. Okay. If there are no more comments, I do have a film that is more accessible to announce for 2 weeks from tonight. And that film it's not a horror film. It's called A Monster Calls. And you have to see monster as tongue-in-cheek. I mentioned this a couple times before. Liam Neeson plays the monster, only you never see his face. The monster is a tree that takes a anthropomorphized shape and counsels a 9-year-old boy as he watches his mother slowly die over many weeks and months. And the boy goes through, I won't say stages of grief, but they're pre-stages of grief, where the monster helps him overcome his objection or his difficulties. And he does go through a a moment when he blames himself for her illness. And basically, the mother never really told him she was dying because she was trying to protect him. And that made him very crazy because he knew something was wrong. And she kept saying, I'm getting better, when he didn't witness that. This is a lovely film. And if you hate special effects movies, you have to see this one because they're stunning. And the voicing that Liam Neeson does for the monster is award worthy. There's such, it's tough love, but it's comforting to hear his voice, and it's so urgent. I fell in love with this film, and some people don't care for it. I don't know why. You're welcome to come and confront me on it. Hi, Roz. I'm sorry I didn't say hi before. And it's available on Amazon Prime. It's several years old. It's made by BJ Bayona, a Spanish film director who's now doing big blockbuster epics, but he also did The Impossibles, about a tidal wave that separates a family, and very sensitive, humanistic. It's really about loss and separation, but it's a very positive ending film. It has a great ending. The boys is an aspiring artist, so that plays out as a theme throughout. And I really hope you like it. If you have grandchildren who are in middle school or above, I'd say it'll be great for them. They'll love the tree coming to life, and as it does like 4 times in the movie. And
I'll tell my son to tell my grandchildren to watch it.
It's really worth seeing, and it's all about love and family, and the boy overcoming what his mother never allowed him to say. I won't take it away from you, but it's just wonderful. So that's what we have in 2 weeks. Now on October 27th, it's a Wednesday night. So spread the word, all you Wednesday night people. I know Marina Steinberg has been begging me, and others have been begging for a Wednesday night. We're going to have the film Jewish Soldiers in Blue and Gray. It's a documentary about 82 minutes long about Jewish families that fought on opposite sides of the Civil War. And this goes, way far back into Jewish American history, before the Civil War, into the first immigrants who came over, and the various settlement patterns they had. The first immigrants arrived, I think, at Charleston and spread south. And later on, many spread to the north. And as we pursued the frontier, the northern Jews went to the northwest and the Midwest, Chicago, Cleveland, and the southern Jews spread out across the south into Texas. And the film will profile various families that sent their sons to war. I don't know that they actually fought with each other hand to hand, but they fought for the Confederacy and for the Union. And when I learned of this, I said, I'd never thought of it or imagined such a thing was possible, because if the war was over slavery, why wasn't every Jew, virulently opposed to it? How could they possibly defend the Confederacy? Well, this is the story of the film. And we're going to have as our guest Professor Jonathan Sarna, who teaches at Brandeis. He's a very knowledgeable historian, very well respected in the Jewish academic community. And he's a wonderful speaker, has a very particular style, but he's very expressive. And he's in the film as well. And I'm preparing a series of questions for him that I have, so that I don't have to read his book or others.
What time
But,
on the 27th? What time is it?
It's at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 22nd. And as it turns out,
22nd or 7th?
27.
7.
And there's another connection that Wilshire has to him. Rabbi Leader was a favored student of Sarna's in rabbinic school or college, I forget. And Rabbi Leader is going to join our group and introduce him. So that'll be terrific.
You'll
And
send out a Zoom for that, Jim?
excuse me?
You'll send out a Zoom link for that?
Oh, absolutely. Now, this is how it's going to work, because there's a Center for Jewish Films called the National Center for Jewish Film. It's based at Brandeis also. And they have a lot of Yiddish films, and it's like YIVO, but for movies, not books. It's a great repository. And I forget how I saw this. It came across, was submitted to the Jewish Film Festival probably 10 years ago. I think the date on the film was 2011. And I was programming for them then. And I saw it. I don't think they programmed it. Maybe they did. But it stayed with me. And it just brings up so many questions about Jewish history in the US, you know, our own immigration patterns, the Jewish diaspora within the US. It's just such a rich topic. We will not exhaust all the questions that people have about it in our hour and a half with him. But I'm very excited about it. We're trying to promote this into a much larger synagogue-wide event because of Rabbi Leader's presence, and it's a new topic. I mean, how many of you ever imagined that Jewish soldiers could fight for the Confederacy?
There's a book, Jim.
The vice president of the
That's right. Thank you, Arthur. I was saying that the vice president of the Confederacy was a Jew. Well,
there is a
there were a lot of Jewish slaveholders.
Yes.
Dara Horn, who's a wonderful Jewish writer, really wonderful Jewish writer, who's just actually come out with a book this week called, I think it's called "People Love Dead Jews."
Yes, yes.
And she's a wonderful writer. And she wrote a fictionalized or historical fiction about Jews in the Civil War and about Judah Benjamin. It's a good read. It's interesting.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I think it's called Any Other Nights or All Other Nights, something like that.
No, isn't it People Love Dead Jews? That's the title of a book.
A new book, but she wrote the book she wrote about the Civil War and Jews.
I see. Okay.
I think is called All Other Nights.
Well, it was new to me when I got it, and I'm glad we could bring Sarna along with it. Because this is coming from the National Council of Jewish Film, we'll probably be sending out a Vimeo link and a password. So to see it, you're going to have to register on the Wilshire Boulevard Temple website, and it will be free. The synagogue is paying for the screening fee, and you'll have. I think I asked for it to be available the Friday before the 27th, and to be available through Thursday. So if you want to tell your family you had this wonderful discussion on a wonderful film, there'll be one more day you could refer people to see it gratis. It's a really important part of our history, especially as it relates to American slavery and the Palestinian conflict. It just resonates forever through our history to this day. And I'm really excited, and I hope we get a good turnout for it, because this is a very prestigious event. Sarna doesn't travel during COVID, and it's a big deal.
Jim, could you clarify when the film will be available, please? It wasn't clear.
Let me pull up my calendar. The film is on Wednesday, the 27th, and the film will be screenable on Friday, the 22nd.
Is that the only day?
Yeah, we'll have a 6-day window.
Ah, okay.
And the film, A Monster Calls, we're discussing that in 2 weeks on Saturday, the 23rd.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a normal 7:30.
That's 7:30. But because it's a weeknight, we're starting a little earlier, and we're thinking that 7:30 is too late for some people who don't want to talk till 9:30. Sarna will be zooming in, and he's on the East Coast, so he's starting at 10:30. I said, let's start at 10 to make it a little easier on him. And very excited about that. And then we have a lot of other really interesting films coming up every 2 weeks after the 23rd. So thanks for participating tonight. I'm so glad we had many different opinions on this, but that's why we do films like this. It just brings out so much that we'd never have discussed in any other way. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jim, for picking another discussion that really adds to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.